The biggest week of the geopolitical theater and markets, financial markets is here, and we have an absolute monster update to talk about because things are escalating. I don't even think that's possible, but they are. We're going to be breaking down exactly what is happening in the world, this conflict between Iran, USA, and Israel. We'll talk about it in today's video. Some countries out there are continuing to run out of fuel. So what countries are going to be next? We're going to talk about that in today's video. We're going to talk about the escalations. We're going to be talking about what's up with Trump as well, because things are looking a little bit quiet on the front. Could there be a surprise attack coming? And at the end of the video, we're going to be talking about the financial markets. What are the most profitable sectors of the economy right now during this conflict? How are the financial markets reacting? And then we also have some other crazy things to share with you, including an ex-Navy SEAL's very accurate take on the whole situation, what could happen next, how that's going to play out. We're going to break it down all in today's crazy update. So if you enjoy it, just like the video. Let's get straight into it. So breaking intel we do have this letter coming out of Leonard F. Anderson, Lieutenant General of the Marine Forces South, and he says right here, to get ready. So the importance of being ready to deploy in light of current operations in Iran, going to say that a mass mobilization could become a reality. And it's also time to prepare your families. So he says that line down the bottom right here, tighten your standards, prepare your family. Our nations expect disciplined, capable forces ready for immediate action. Get ready. And that is the Marine Forces Reserve. So we are getting signals, evidence that more troops are on the way. You can see right here from the New York Times, the US now has over 50,000 troops deployed in the Middle East. At almost a third of the size of the continental US, Iran has 93 million people. Taking, let alone holding, a deep, complex country of its size and complexity and weaponry with 50,000 troops is not doable. That's what the New York Times is saying right there. And we also have right here, Pentagon is preparing for weeks of ground operations in Iran, US officials tell the Washington Post. So right here, we're getting continuous signals from multiple legitimate sources that ground invasion does look like it is potentially on the way. So Trump is continuing to mobilize. He is continuing to send special operation forces, infantry groups to the Central Command area. And the situation continues to escalate. And we'll talk about the ramifications of this and whether this is even going to be successful later in the video. But again, we continue to see intel that the situation is escalating. So the USS Tripoli has now arrived in the Middle East carrying 3,500 sailors and Marines in preparation for the ground offensive right there. And according to the Washington Post, we have now a 2-month continuous window, right? So now it's expanded. So remember, this was supposed to be like a quick war, a few days, and then it went into a couple of weeks, and now they're talking about multiple months, and it could even be longer than that. So have a look at this. So thousands of American soldiers are arriving in the Middle East for what could become a dangerous new phase of the war. Any invasion would involve raids by a mixture of special operations forces and conventional infantry troops. President Trump has wavered between declaring that the war is winding down and threatening to amplify it. Discussions over the past month have touched upon the possible seizure of Kharg Island and raids into coastal areas near the Strait of Hormuz. Now, we'll get into the details of whether that actually can happen because, again, talking a huge game. Into some more escalations, you can see right here, Iran has struck the Prince Sultan Air Base, according to the Wall Street Journal, in Saudi Arabia. Damage to an American E-3 Sentry, and potentially multiple of these have occurred. And the Iranian Speaker of the Parliament is mocking this, saying sustained only minor damage right there. And other satellite imagery is actually indicating that there might have been multiple airplanes taken out by this. So this could be very costly. It could be up to, nearly $1 billion worth of damage with that attack right there. And as this escalation continues on, we've also got Yemen coming into the battle. So in a major escalation, Yemen's Houthi group has officially joined the war with a ballistic missile launch at Israel, just as the war hit its 1-month mark. And all eyes are now on the Bab al-Mandab Strait. If closed, the world loses another 6 million barrels of daily oil supply. And it's getting more and more radical. And that right there is this strait. So we might potentially have a double strait closure, which would be absolutely catastrophic for the global economy. And this is literally called the Strait or the Gate of Tears. That is my understanding. This tiny little area. So that is what? Not very much. It looks like about 20 kilometers or so from that side to that side. That is what Yemen is potentially going to close off next. So they have entered this battle. They might close that off. And again, this could be catastrophic for the oil market and the world economy. So the total offline capacity between the Strait of Hormuz and the Gate of Tears is 25 million barrels per day, 25% of global supply. And again, this is just mind-boggling. This is just real. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And into more escalations, we can see right here, the Iranians are striking back. So we've seen industries getting destroyed. Iran's largest steel factories have been hit. A power plant, a civilian nuclear site has been attacked. The Iranians have been striking back against this, taking out aluminium plants within the Persian Gulf. And as this escalates, and as we potentially might get more closures, countries are running out of fuel. So this Isle of Man has now run out of diesel fuel. So Isle of Man, thousands of trucks are stranded, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. The Isle of Man has run out of diesel fuel, leaving thousands of drivers at risk of becoming stranded. Drivers across the self-governing Crown dependency have reported that all garages have run out of diesel due to limited petrol availability. And so this is getting worse. So remember, if you think the government is going to come in and save you, what happened to the Isle of Man government right here? They didn't save anything. They didn't prevent anything from happening in this situation. This is why I think it's a good idea to prepare for possibly this scenario may be happening where you live as well, depending on what location you are tuning in from. So if you're tuning in from the Isle of Man today, you're part of one of the, you're someone who watches these videos. Again, no diesel in your country, unfortunately, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. But not only that, it's actually spreading to Africa. So the US-Israeli war on Iran is disrupting fuel supplies to Africa, pushing countries like Ghana, South Africa, and Kenya to seek relief from Nigeria's huge Dangote refinery. But one plant may not meet soaring demand. So again, we're seeing this spill-on effect. We're seeing this delayed effect, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. Every day this conflict is not resolved, this is like a ticking time bomb. This is just it's going to have huge ramifications around the world. As diesel runs out, remember diesel, most transport in the world is running on diesel. So trucks run on diesel, tractors, you name it, farming, they need diesel. The world isn't running on solar power at the moment, most of it anyway. So this is a real catastrophe in the making. Now, what could potentially happen next is, what is interesting is Trump has been quiet over the weekend. So it's eerily quiet this weekend for the first time since the Iran war began. President Trump has gone unusually quiet this weekend. So today's Monday. Trump has a few hours left to make an announcement. Otherwise, you might see mayhem in the financial markets. We're already starting to see that in the oil price, which we'll bring up soon. But it says right here, no new headlines, more aggressive strikes, and no comment on the bond market situation. With escalation risks rising, the silence is deafening. And that is 100% true. And also, we have an update right here from Channel 12 News. In the case of a U.S. ground operation in Iran, Israeli soldiers will not be participating on the ground. So factor that in. We're seeing volatility come in for Bitcoin, and also we are starting to see this oil price lose control. So can the prices in the markets be manipulated? That's one of the biggest questions on everyone's mind at the moment, because the Iranians are actually making fun of Trump's previous attempts to manipulate the market. So he says right here, this is the Iranian Speaker of Parliament. And this is the great thing about platforms like X, is you can actually directly understand what they're saying. Now he says right here, heads up, pre-market so-called news or truth is often just a setup for profit taking. Basically, it's a reverse indicator. Do the opposite. If they pump it, short it. If they dump it, go long. See something tomorrow, you know the drill. So he's basically talking like a Twitter KOL with some financial advice right here. And he's mocking the situation. Again, the Iranians are mocking the situation because they're seeing through. So at the moment, the S&P 500 futures, they're trading at about negative 0.22%. So a little bit of a weak opening. And the big question on everyone's mind at the moment is actually what happens with the oil price. Can the oil price be suppressed? Is Trump going to come out with something that does suppress this? But have a look at this. It's going way back up. So if we zoom in right here, the suppression is not working. So right at this critical moment, Trump needs to come out and he needs to say something. And what else we know about Trump is there has been more baloney coming out of Trump. And have a listen to this one, guys. So Trump is doubling down now on the 8 oil tankers, and he's got something else to say. He's got a tribute apparently coming his way. So let's just listen into this, and I'll give you my take on it.
So we're dealing directly, and as you know, they've agreed to send 8 boats 2 days ago, and then they added another 2, so it was 10 boats. And now today they gave us as a tribute, I don't know, I can't define it exactly, but they gave us, I think out of a sign of respect, 20 boats of oil, big boats of oil, going through the Hormuz Strait. And that's taking place starting tomorrow morning.
So according to Trump, he's received 10 boats and he's got 20 boats coming in today. But the problem is there's been no evidence to support that 10 boats claim from Trump. So we've seen the sources from Bloomberg. They said it was fake news. And then also this 20, it's like a tribute to Trump, 20 boats of oil. Why would the Iranians do that given what's going on? And look, we'll wait to see if the 20 boats of oil in the form of a tribute to President Trump comes in. But I suspect this could also be more unproven claims and unhinged claims by Trump during this whole thing. And not only that, let's actually play this clip. This actually came out of Trump recently about what he wants his legacy to be.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I'll tell you what. So I told you that I settled 8 wars. That means millions and millions of people. And some of those wars were going on. One was 34 years, one was 32 years, one was 29 years, one was 22 years. They were long-term wars and a lot of people being killed every year. So I've saved millions and millions of people. And I mean, I know it doesn't sound right for me to say this, but I'd love my legacy to be made as a great peacemaker, because I really believe I'm a peacemaker. It doesn't seem it right now. I think I'm a peacemaker.
So there we have some Trump comedy coming in, saying he's a peacemaker, or he'd love to be a peacemaker. But this is as troops roll in, as we've seen just escalation after escalation as this conflict gets more destructive. You know, what Trump has been saying has been an inverse of the reality on the ground. So that is what Trump has been saying right here. And actually, in a new record for Trump with proven verifiability, according to Newsweek, Trump's economic approval rating now has dropped below Joe Biden's all-time low. So Trump is now sitting below Biden. I can't even believe I'm saying that, but he's actually below Biden in terms of his economic policy. And this is because oil prices are going up. The stock market's getting destroyed. Inflation is going up. Everything that could be going wrong is going wrong. But not only that, it's actually getting worse. So the whole situation is getting worse. And not only that, it's going to be a destructive force for the Republican Party. So you might see a complete wipeout in the right wing of the Republican Party in the next election. So this might be the beginning of the end. It might get completely destroyed. This is how bad the situation is getting right now. So I think where we are right now is we are in a blackout phase from Trump. So Trump is most likely going to come out with some type of announcement within the next 24 hours about what happens next, what his plan is to do in this conflict. Is he going to escalate it once again? This week, we're going to see whether, you know, the metal hits the road, or whatever the expression is, the pedal hits the metal with this troop deployment. Remember, you know, we are seeing, and we'll talk about that Navy SEAL at the end of the video, more evidence of troops coming into the area. And if they do go through with this, this is going to be a test, because we know the Iranians are not going to give up. We know the Iranians are going to fight. We know the Iranians are highly motivated. We know the Iranians have very good missile and drone technology. So we might actually see a cataclysmic fight between the US and the Iranians in the Persian Gulf, like we've never witnessed before. This could be like an epic fight. And it's no guarantee that US is going to win this. At the moment, you know, with the lack of troops, people are saying you need like, 500,000 troops, 1 million troops to deploy to conquer Iran and do what Trump is wanting to do right now. And the thing is, if you're going with too little troops, you might just be sacrificing some of your best men, and they might just get wiped out. That's the big fear from the US military forces right now in the situation. And if we do have a look at the financial markets, there is a decent case to say there is a lot of suppression, there's a lot of manipulation across many markets. That's the way I see it anyway. I think, with the announcements that have been coming out, the knee-jerk reactions, you can see the S&P 500, though it is beginning to crater to some degree. It is dropping rapidly right here. So that is going down, and it's a huge slide down right here over the last few weeks. And if we have a look at, say, the Brent oil price, again, this is it. This is going to be 24 hours by 24 hours. Trump has to react to this. If this continues to spike and it holds long enough and the Strait of Hormuz closes for long enough, you're looking at the most dire economic and geopolitical and ramifications around the world. So just remember, this conflict, this is like not only is it like the Vietnam conflict where it's wildly unpopular and people don't really want to fight in this thing, but it's centered around one of the global supply lines, right? So it is like the Vietnam War, but like there's some very important trade lines right near it which are getting shut down. That's the similarity between the Vietnam War. So it's actually got the potential to be way worse and way unpopular than the Vietnamese War. And so oil is spiking up. What is gold doing at the moment? So gold seems to be consolidating at around 4,500. So there seems to be some strength coming into gold. I've seen what people are saying about gold. Remember, gold, it's got this independence to it, right? So you don't have to trust the US dollar. You don't have to trust politicians. You don't have to trust, the fiat system, which we know long-term fiat is a losing system. We know that. It's a fact that fiat is losing in the long term. We've seen all the graphs to support that. So gold is holding on relatively good. I'd love to see more of this happen with gold. Just hold on to some key levels of support. Silver sitting about $68, so mirroring up to gold. And again, silver is needed in industry in the future, so I think silver is very solid. And if we look at some other areas, I want to just highlight some other areas. So if this case does get very bad, I've run some analysis right here to talk about some sectors that are looking highly profitable. So if you have a look right here, the most profitable sectors with the prolonged shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz, you're looking at oil and gas upstream production. So these are companies that are not based in the Middle East, right? This is US shale, non-OPEC and alternatives. These are the areas that are starting to boom during the shutdown. So you might see some windfall profits come into these areas. So oil and gas upstream, also LNG exporters not connected to the Middle East. So in the USA, LNG exporters going very well. Also in Australia as well. So you can see some LNG exporters doing extremely well, able to profit from the rising LNG gas price, but also not being affected by the what's happening in the Middle East. And also aluminium as well. So just recently there has been breaking developments that aluminium plants are getting destroyed in the Persian Gulf, right? So this is 8 to 9% of global output. This is pushing other companies to capture this massive destruction in supply. So you can see some of these companies right here that are benefiting immensely from the destruction of aluminium productions and other industries that are getting destroyed within this. And we also have fertilizer production companies right here that are getting very much a big beneficiary upswing from this. And we have petrochemicals and plastics. So we are seeing, basically what's happening is you're seeing oil getting shut off, right? Oil production getting shut off. You're seeing also other industries within the Persian Gulf getting destroyed. There's going to be other areas, other companies around the world that are going to be stepping in to, increase production, profit from rising prices. And that's also something to just factor in. So as this drags on, it's going to get more and more profitable for those companies. Now, the Strait of Hormuz oil shock is about to head west. So again, this could get worse and worse and worse as there's a lag effect. So I want you to understand that as this conflict draws on. Let's also just mention the weirdness coming out of the White House X account. So you can see right here, look at this. This is gross. Coming out of the White House X account. Curious how American farmers are benefiting right now, or exactly how much each state has saved. and they're using Only Farms. So that's the OnlyFans parody, like the website. And Thomas Massey has come in and said, can you just arrest the eco-conspirators instead of riffing on a XXX site right there? And the White House is getting completely disconnected from reality. So you have to also understand, as we've been picking up in these videos, this White House account is run by a weirdo or weirdos, a group of weirdos in here. We've been saying that for a few weeks right now. So this is also paralleling potentially to the unhingedness of what Trump has been saying. So there's a whole disconnect from reality that we are witnessing, especially with the White House, with its read on things. And having said that, let's listen in to an ex-Navy SEAL. He has a great analysis of what might potentially happen if this thing goes to the next level. So if Trump comes out this week and he says, that's it, we're going all in on a ground invasion, let's listen into Matt Bracken. He's got some great analysis right here.
At the end of the Vietnam War, and it's really such a deja vu to see Hegseth and the other admirals coming out and giving like lists of numbers of bombs, because it's straight out of Vietnam. Yep. So we dropped 3 times more tons of bombs on Vietnam than we did on Germany in World War II, and we lost the war. Yeah. Okay. When people are talking about air supremacy over Iran, you have to compare it to Vietnam, which is 1/10 the size. South Vietnam is 1/10 the size of Iran. And we didn't have to like fly from 1,000 kilometers away to get to Vietnam like we do today, to stay out of the defensive missile range. We had bases right in Vietnam. They could take off and be hitting a target in 10 minutes. Yeah. And we killed millions of Vietnamese, millions. So like, as far as taking out some leaders and the country will quit, we killed millions of Vietnamese that only made them fight harder. What they're going to do is what Joe Kent said this morning on Deep Dive, the Colonel Davis show. Yep. They're going to let the Americans in. Yep. They're going to turn off radar, turn off defenses. Remember, these guys invented chess. Yes. They invented the Shahed drone, a whole class of missiles that nobody else had. They have tunnels in mountains with rockets better than we have, hypersonics with steerable warheads that we don't have. Mm-hmm. So anybody that thinks that we can just land there and defeat them is crazy. But to raise it to the next level, the chess level, they're going to allow us in. Yes. They will. The more people we put on Carg Island, the better. Then they'll close the trap.
So great analysis right there from Matt Bracken, ex-Navy SEAL. And I have to say, this could potentially happen, unfortunately. So you might actually see the Iranians, which, have defeated the US, I'd say, in the first round. Trump is coming in for potentially a double or nothing play. So if he goes through with this double or nothing, and he does try this ground operation, and the Iranians win this, it might be all over for the US in the Middle East. So if the Iranians do, again, people don't understand the gravity of what's up for grabs at the moment. So this is like the grand finale of the Middle East and the USA, and this has been building for decades and decades and decades. And effectively, if the Iranians win this, the USA is going to be out of the area. So that could be one thing where one option is there is this grand finale ground invasion, and you have this big, almost like battle, like a huge blockbuster battle between the US and Iran. And there's a chance Iran actually wins that, right? There is a chance Iran could be victorious. USA gets defeated. That would be cataclysmic for the US strategy right here. And the other thing is, there is a chance as well, this could all be a bluff from Trump, and maybe Trump. It really depends on the US right wing at the moment. I'll talk about that just a little bit later. But Trump might have to just take a huge amount of concessions to the Iranians with a massive, a concession on the peace deal. Because at the moment, look, Trump's come out with like outlandish 15-point plans. The Iranians are basically saying we're not interested in that. We're playing hardball. We want reparations. We want you out of the region. So Trump might have to, he might have to potentially do a deal that's going to favor, or it's going to result in a massive Iranian victory at the moment. And I actually think one of the secret analyses for you guys at the end of the video right now, the most important area of battle, it's actually not in the Middle East right now. What I mean by that is there is actually a fracture within the right wing of US politics right now, and there is a growing divide. There is almost a civil conflict between real kind of American first people who want a different style of geopolitics. You know, that was traditionally stemmed by people like Ron Paul, and that has become a lot more popular. This kind of Roman style of geopolitics, where you have commerce with nations and you don't get entangled in all these kind of, alliances that can actually drag you down from a strategic point of view, versus the other side of the right wing at the moment. So that is actually the nexus of battle and the struggle for power. And whoever wins that battle, right, is going to determine where the US goes long term right now. So it's a very, very important battle. I'm not sure if people really understand that. And I would say, look, the Ron Pauls and that type of right wing, founding father type of, strategy that the US was born with, the real truth behind that is it needs to get a lot more politically collective. So if it wants to win, it has to politically collectivize. It needs to organize itself, because that's the one thing the real right wing, the traditional, the heritage right wing of America doesn't have at the moment. It doesn't actually organize very well, which is ironic. It's just a bunch of individuals quite often just complaining about the situation. But you'll see the people who actually are very, very powerful and influential in the world, what do? They collectivize and they also politically activate. It's these two things they do, and they do it very well. And the US right wing needs to do the same thing. So if they want to battle this, you almost have to fight fire with fire. And of course, I'm saying in a very, just in a pure political sense, right? Not in a violent sense or anything like that. I'm just saying that's actually the equation. That's actually where the battle is going to be for the US going into the future. And it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. So that is today's update. Bit of secret analysis at the end of the video. And just hold on to your hats. Massive week coming through. Massive volatility in the market. And just get ready. And that's today's update. Appreciate you guys tuning in. See you in the next one.